many actors who only knew how to act with no sound, with no actually acting. So they went a lot of bankrupt and actors outward. Here starts the golden era. From 27 to 29, it was a little bit working how the sound would be perfect. From 29 to the 40s, it was the greatest era. It was when the Greta Garbo, Humphrey Bogart, Shirley Temple, Clark Gable, the big movies, the musical movies started to be produced with Dancing in the Rain, the movies with Frank Sinatra, all those movies. The first releases of Gothic horror movies, the beginning of special effects, very badly made back then, but it was the beginning with Frankenstein and Dracula. The gangster movies become popular as well. And Walt Disney, so far, he was doing only short movies. He didn't have the technology till then to do the animation. And so it was in this decade he released his first long movie, which was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So it's like 80 years old. Then in the middle of this became the World War II. What happened? The scripts became a little more directed to themes, to work as propaganda for the war, and to make people see the country at their best. Especially then came Casablanca here. It was the release also of Citizen Kane, who is known up to this day as the best movie ever. It's an amazing movie, especially for the period when it was released, because it was very revolutionary. It was the script, the kind of production, everything. And people were afraid, so became the most fantasia. People, more fantasia, movies when people think of what could be the world. I forgot.
Bring expectations.
Yeah, but more fantasia, things that didn't exist or would never exist.
Like Aldous Huxley, for example.
Huh?
Aldous Huxley, writer of the Fantastic World.
The 50s and the 60s was not a couple of decades very good for the film business. After the war, they started a post-war committee. They went after a lot of producers and a lot of actors. They thought of comedies that were spread in the world. They didn't want it to be spread, so they went after a lot of people. The Cold War. They began with the Cold War paranoia, as they call it. What happened? They started to make films with analogies, like the ET, like the aliens is coming to the Earth, to make analogies with the war because they couldn't speak of the war itself. It was increased. This was a very bad decade for the movies because the TV increase was very large. So it was a medium. People were stopping going to the movies because they had TV on their home. And then because of that, because of all these things, the Fox, the 20th Fox studio, invented the cinemascope. The cinemascope was a technique to make, till here, the movies were made in the format as the TV. The cinemascope was the technique to make it white, as we see today, widescreen. So this was the widescreen to make the bigger screens on the theater, so they could bring more people to the cinema. And also to bring people, they started to make films that would connect more, like biblical films, like Pacto, Ben-Hur, Indian historical films that would bring more people. The 60s was the times where, because of all that happened in the 50s, lots of studios declined. So the big studios started to make films to acclaim the family. It was the time of Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady. It was the biggest time for Audrey Hepburn, the American Sweetheart back then. And also when the foreign movies started to enter America hardly. The beginning of Federico Fellini, the biggest Ingmar Bergman, Fellini, che è italiano, con la Dolce Vita, they released the first James Bond, Dr. No, in 62. America was more open to receive the foreign movies because the internal movies were all driven to the family themes. And the nuclear paranoia. This started the nuclear war, the thought of a nuclear war, driven the writers to make movies about war. All the movies that all you know saying that America would save everybody.
Remember at that time there was already Oscar award.
Yeah, the first Oscar, the Academy began. They joined the Academy in 27.
27. Oh my.
The first award was in 29. The 70s was like the second golden age, let's say. The first one, during the 40s and all the 70s. What happened here? They started to put more sexual and battle contents, gunfights and fights in the movies to attract more people. The new methods of storytelling. Now the writers were allowed to do. They didn't have to do linear films, chronological films. The good guy and the bad guy, they could have a small line between them. You didn't know which one, because back then the good guy was like God and the bad guy. The directors were seen more like part of the film, because before they had to do everything the writers said and the filmmakers, the studios said. Now the directors were the main part of the film. He would decide if he would do linear, the tone of the movie. That's when the great directors, as we know today, like Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola, Woody Allen, Altman, all the directors began their career. And it was the beginning of the great blockbusters. Blockbusters is what they call, they get more money in the movies, at the theaters. The first big blockbuster ever was Jaws.
The shark is a good guy.
What?
The shark is a good guy.
Yeah.
Great film.
That's scary. Pretty scary. It was Jaws, the first blockbuster. Bruce Lee entered in the 70s with the China movie influence in the United States. And with this blockbuster started between all these directors, I said, there are two of them who started here. In the 80s, they will probably dominate, who is Spielberg and George Lucas. The first one in the 70s, Star Wars.
Fernando, when did you have the start of the movies without chronological sequence? For example, the movies, the 70s, the
beginning of
movies.
the 70s.
For example, you have a scene in the future, at the same time they went back to the past and in the 70s.
The beginning of the decade was not very good for the producers because of the VCR. VCRs were entering home, so they were very scared. But then they started to use it for them. You're going to the theater, you see my movie, you love my movie, and then you can take it to your home. They started to sell, to make special editions for CR. And it was a decade, the first half of the decade dominated by Lucas Spielberg. They had a partnership. They did the trilogy, the Star Wars, the sequence. They did Jaw 2. It was the beginning of the sequels as well. They started all the sequels. Star Wars is 1, 2, 3 by George Lucas back then. The Jaws 1 and 2. Then Indiana Jones was a huge blockbuster. E.T. was an amazing film in '86. I guess it was the first film I went to the movies. Because it arrived in my city in '91.
I wasn't born yet.
No, me neither. Just 91. Maybe I wasn't born. And in parallel with the biggest studios making all these major blockbusters, there was independent movies. Scorsese was called an independent director. So he did the Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, all these movies, and he was acclaimed by the critics as the best independent director. And in the 80s also was the beginning of what we have in mass now, the cartoon movie. It was the first by Tim Burton, Batman, which was box office. It made Jack Nixon very rich. He made the first contract. He gained like $2 million for the movie, and he made a contract that every single thing for the rest of his life that was sold with Batman name, he would gain the royalties. That was his contract. So up to this day, he makes money on this movie. In the 90s, the commercial movies were gaining so much strength that the big studios started to create the small independent movies of their own. So Universal made Miramax. Today it's a big studio, but back then it was an independent one. The special effects domination. The 80s didn't have much. It was a little. They were studying it, so here we came. Special effects. I don't know if you remember Terminator, with that guy that turns into Mercury.
Yeah, the element, Mercury.
That's number 2. That's in Terminator 2.
That's
Yeah,
Terminator.
that's good.
Yeah.
And Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park for special effects was the hit of the 90s. And Titanic as well. So the different kind of special effects, but also, and then Disney regained popularity with family movies. The Lion King, The Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and the 3D digital, the first one by Pixar, which belonged after Disney bought Pixar, Toy Story. Toy Story was president for a whole lot of 3D movies, all the good movies we've seen so far. And the birth of DVD. The VCR era was done. The birth of DVD is when they started also making special editions, special cuts, extras, everything to make money out of it. And from the 21st century from now, we have a big rise of documentary film. Up to then, I don't think people were very interested. The March of the Penguins, those films from Michael Moore, Fahrenheit, Logan Boulevard, Over Boulevard. They revival the epic movies. We had back then Benu, Spartacus. Now we have Gladiator, we have 300, we have this kind of movies. The musical, we have Moulin Rouge, we have Chicago, we have the Phantom of the Opera, Black Swan. The beginning of the big franchises we had back then: Indiana Jones 1, 2, 3, But now we have The Lord of the Rings, we have Harry Potter, we have the vampires. Twilight, the Twilight Saga. And which was for me one of the best movies ever, which for the special effects made a big difference, was Matrix. And after that, everything changed up to Avatar. And then the Avatar was the seventh big change on the special effect movies. And Avatar is today the biggest box office ever after Titanic. The two biggest box offices are from the same director, James Cameron.